First contact and assessment. The observation pod hummed softly as Zrel adjusted the scanners, focusing them on the blue-green planet below. Earth, as its inhabitants called it. From orbit, it looked peaceful, oceans glittering in sunlight, land masses adorned with green forests and golden deserts. Zrel's iridescent scales shifted color slightly as they reflected the glow from the instrument panel. Preliminary scan complete, announced the ship's eye. Atmospheric composition suitable for extended observation. Technology detection indicates pre-interstellar civilization. Zrel's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, an expression of satisfaction among the Viridians. The collective had sent their best scout to assess this world, and Zrel had never failed a mission. 12 successful conquests bore testament to their skill in analyzing potential targets. Begin stealth descent, Zrel commanded. Target isolated landmass for initial observation post. The pod's engines shifted to silent mode as it entered Earth's atmosphere, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to human detection systems. Zrel reviewed the mission parameters once more, assessed technological capabilities, military strength, social cohesion, and resistance potential. The Viridian collective needed new resources, and unaligned worlds were always the first targets. The craft settled in a dense forest, landing struts extending to cushion its touchdown. Outside, a light rain pattered against the hull. Zrel activated the external sensors and began collecting data. Primitive communication networks detected, the AI reported. Multiple competing military forces. No unified planetary defense. Significant internal conflicts. Zrel recorded these findings with practiced efficiency. Such fragmentation typically indicates an easy conquest, they noted in the log. The collective's unified forces should encounter minimal resistance. For 3 days, Zrel remained in the pod, analyzing global data patterns. Humans fought among themselves constantly. Their weapons, while destructive, were centuries behind Viridian technology. Their political systems seemed designed for inefficiency. All signs pointed to a species ripe for subjugation. On the 4th day, Zrel decided direct observation was necessary. Donning an adaptive camouflage suit that could mimic local vegetation and terrain, they ventured out to study the nearest human settlement, a small town nestled between hills and a winding river. The settlement was primitive by Viridian standards, structures made of wood and processed minerals, combustion vehicles that polluted the atmosphere, humans moving about without apparent purpose or coordination. Zrel recorded it all, adding annotations about weaknesses and vulnerabilities. As night fell, Zrel prepared to return to the pod when warning sirens began to sound throughout the settlement. Humans emerged from their dwellings, some panicked, others moving with surprising purpose. Zrel's translator implant converted their speech. The dams failing. Everyone to high ground. Get the evacuation team to the east side. Medical units set up at the school building. Zrel watched, fascinated, as chaos transformed into organization. Without central command, humans self-sorted into functional groups. Some gathered supplies, others prepared vehicles. A group in matching clothing established communication points. The water came an hour later, a rushing torrent that devoured the lower section of the settlement. From Zrel's vantage point on a hillside, the destruction seemed absolute. The Viridian expected the humans to flee, to save themselves as any rational species would. Instead, they moved toward danger. Humans in boats ventured into the floodwaters. Others formed chains to rescue those stranded on rooftops. A team worked frantically to reinforce a structure where many had taken shelter. When one human was swept away, 3 others immediately plunged into the current to save them. Zrel's data recorder captured it all, but the scout struggled to categorize what they were seeing. This behavior contradicted established patterns for pre-interstellar species. Self-preservation should be the dominant instinct, yet these humans risked death for strangers. By morning, the waters had receded. Zrel expected the settlement to be abandoned, its population scattered. Instead, the humans gathered in the center of what remained. They shared food and water. They treated injuries. Most surprising to Zrel, they began rebuilding immediately. Fascinating adaptive response, Zrel noted in their log. Minimal recovery time required after catastrophic event. Social cohesion appears to strengthen rather than fragment under pressure. For the next week, Zrel observed the settlement's recovery. Humans from neighboring areas arrived with supplies and assistance. The injured helped as they could. Even young humans participated in restoration efforts. What had been destruction was rapidly transforming into renewal. Zrel decided to expand the observation range. Using the pod's transport capabilities, they relocated to the outskirts of a major urban center. Here, millions of humans lived in dense proximity, an arrangement that would have been intolerable for Viridians. The city pulsed with chaotic energy. Humans moved in seemingly random patterns, yet somehow avoided constant collision. Their transportation systems appeared inefficient, but functioned despite overwhelming complexity. Their communication networks buzzed with trivial information, yet critical data somehow filtered through. Zrel infiltrated a human information facility, a library, according to the translator. Inside, they discovered records of human history, wars that should have destroyed them, diseases that should have decimated them, environmental catastrophes that should have ended them. Yet after each calamity, humans not only survived but emerged stronger. Most disturbing to Zrel was the discovery of human theoretical capability. Their sciences, while primitive in application, contained concepts that matched or even exceeded Viridian understanding in certain fields. Their fiction-imagined technologies, the collective had only recently developed. Their capacity for innovation appeared limitless, constrained only by their current resources. On the 17th day of observation, Zrel witnessed something that fundamentally altered their assessment. A structure in the city caught fire, a towering building that housed hundreds of humans. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but the fire spread faster. Zrel expected the humans to establish a perimeter and allow the structure to burn. It was the logical approach: sacrifice the few for the safety of many. The Viridian watched in astonishment as humans instead rushed into the flame-engulfed building. They emerged carrying others, often at great personal risk. When the building's integrity failed, several rescuers were trapped inside. What happened next defied Viridian understanding of rational behavior. More humans entered the collapsing structure, specifically to save those who had gone in to save others. Zrel's recording device captured a human commander saying, "We never leave our people behind. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes." The phrase resonated in Zrel's mind as they returned to the observation pod that night. The implications troubled them deeply. The collective's conquests had always targeted worlds where self-preservation outweighed collective action, where beings could be isolated and overcome individually. These humans were different. They possessed a quality Zrel had no word for in the Viridian language. The closest approximation might be self-sacrificial cohesion, a willingness to die for the group that paradoxically made the species stronger, not weaker. Back in the pod, Zrel prepared the first comprehensive report to the collective. Their four hands moved over the controls, compiling data, analyzing patterns, calculating probabilities. The conclusion was unavoidable, but would not be welcome. Assessment of Earth civilization indicates abnormal resistance potential. Zrel began. While technologically inferior and politically fragmented, human response patterns suggest conventional conquest strategies may prove ineffective. Humans display unprecedented adaptability under pressure and exhibit social cohesion that increases proportionally to threat level. Zrel hesitated before adding the final recommendation: advise postponement of invasion until further study can determine optimal approach strategy. Standard protocols may result in unacceptable collective casualties. The transmission took only moments to reach the Viridian command vessel waiting at the edge of the solar system. The response came equally quickly. Assessment noted. Continue observation. Focus on military weaknesses. Invasion preparations proceed as scheduled. Zrel stared at the message. 4 eyes blinking in asynchronous patterns, a sign of distress among Viridians. The collective was making a dangerous miscalculation. Humans were not like the other species they had conquered. They were something new, something unpredictable. And in that unpredictability lay a power Zrel was only beginning to understand. The warning and decision. Dawn broke over the urban landscape as Zrel activated their adaptive camouflage. The collective's response troubled them deeply. Command had dismissed their concerns, focusing only on humanity's technological inferiority. It was a dangerous oversight. Today's mission would focus on human military capabilities. Perhaps concrete evidence of their potential would convince the collective to reconsider. Zrel had identified a training facility on the outskirts of the city, where humans prepared for combat. The perimeter security was primitive. Motion sensors and visual surveillance easily circumvented by Viridian technology. Inside, Zrel observed human soldiers engaged in various training exercises. Their physical capabilities were unimpressive by Viridian standards. Their weapons, while lethal, were chemical-based projectiles or crude explosives, nothing like the collective's energy weapons and gravitational disruptors. Yet something about their training protocols caught Zrel's attention. Unlike Viridian military drills which emphasized perfect execution of established tactics, human exercises constantly changed. Commanders would suddenly alter scenarios, removing resources, changing objectives, introducing unexpected obstacles. Adaptation training, Zrel noted in their log. They deliberately practice improvisation. In one exercise, a unit's communications were disabled, their weapons rendered inoperable, and their supplies removed. Rather than failing the exercise, the humans immediately developed alternative communication methods, fashioned makeshift weapons, and continued toward their objective. Zrel followed a different group into an indoor facility where they engaged in simulated combat. The scout expected to see rehearsed formations and standard tactics. Instead, each simulation was unique. The humans made mistakes, learned from them instantly, and adjusted their approach. Their commander didn't punish failure. He encouraged learning from it. They prepare for the unknown, Zrel realized. Not for specific enemies or scenarios, but for adaptation itself. The implications were profound. The collective's invasion strategy relied on predictable enemy responses. If humans could adapt in real time to unprecedented threats, standard conquest protocols would fail. As night fell, Zrel returned to the observation pod and compiled their findings. The report was detailed, emphasizing the humans' adaptive capabilities and unpredictable response patterns. The conclusion was stark. Standard invasion force inadequate. Recommend comprehensive strategy revision and force multiplication by factor of 5. The collective's response was immediate and dismissive. Analysis rejected. Human military capability confirmed inferior. Adaptive potential irrelevant against overwhelming technological superiority. Invasion proceeds as scheduled in 20 Earth rotations. Complete your reconnaissance and prepare for extraction. Zrel's scales flickered between colors, a physical manifestation of internal conflict. The collective was wrong. For the first time in Zrel's long career as a scout, they considered the possibility that their civilization, despite its advancement, had fundamental blind spots. The next day, Zrel expanded their research. Using the primitive human information network, the Internet, they delved deeper into human history. What they found only reinforced their concerns. Humans had faced extinction-level events multiple times and survived. Their planet was what Viridians classified as a death world. Extreme temperature variations, high gravity, intense radiation, countless pathogens and predators. Evolution on Earth hadn't selected for stability as it had on the Viridian homeworld. It had selected for adaptability. Most concerning was humanity's response to existential threats. When faced with potential annihilation, humans didn't surrender, they unified. Ancient enemies became allies. Resources were shared. Innovation accelerated. This pattern had repeated throughout their history. They become stronger when threatened, Zrel noted. The invasion may achieve the opposite of its intended effect. That evening, Zrel received another transmission from Command. Advance Fleet has entered Sol's system. Maintain observation protocols. Prepare for extraction in 5 rotations. It was happening too quickly. The collective, overconfident in its technological superiority, was rushing toward a confrontation they didn't understand. Zrel needed more evidence, something that would convince even the most stubborn Viridian commanders. They decided to investigate human response to unknown threats directly. Using specialized equipment, Zrel generated a false signal that mimicked an unidentified object approaching Earth. They infiltrated a human defense facility to observe the response. The reaction was immediate. Humans detected the phantom signal and initiated response protocols. What impressed Zrel wasn't the technology they employed, but the speed of their organizational adaptation. Within hours, scientific, military, and governmental entities worldwide were coordinating efforts. Information was being shared across political boundaries. Defense systems were activated, but so were diplomatic channels. They prepared for both conflict and communication simultaneously. Zrel had seen enough. The evidence was irrefutable. Humans might appear divided and technologically primitive, but they possessed qualities that made them uniquely dangerous when threatened. The collective's invasion would not find an easy conquest. It would awaken a formidable enemy. Returning to the observation pod, Zrel prepared a final report with the highest priority designation, one reserved for imminent threats to the collective itself. Critical ASSESSNEANT. Human response patterns indicate unprecedented threat potential. Species evolves rapidly under pressure. Technological inferiority temporary condition only. Invasion will accelerate human unification and technological development. Probability of successful conquest, minimal. Probability of creating powerful enemy, near certainty. Recommendation. Immediate abort of invasion plans. Reconsider Earth as potential ally rather than conquest target. The response came after a long delay. Scout Zrel, your behavior indicates possible contamination by local influences. Your assessment contradicts all established conquest metrics. Report to extraction point immediately for decontamination and reassignment. Invasion proceeds as planned. Zrel stared at the message, realizing the collective would not be swayed. Their civilization's arrogance had become its blind spot. Millennia of successful conquests had bred a dangerous overconfidence. For the first time in their life, Zrel considered an unthinkable action, betrayal of the collective. The thought process was alien, uncomfortable. Viridians were communal by nature, individual action against group consensus almost unheard of. Yet something about human individuality had affected Zrel. The capacity to stand alone, to see differently, to act independently. It was a power Zrel had never considered valuable until now. The decision crystallized slowly, then all at once. If the collective wouldn't listen, perhaps humanity should be warned. Not to save the humans, though that would be a consequence, but to prevent the collective from stumbling into a war it didn't understand. Zrel spent the final day modifying communication equipment. Using components from the observation pod, they constructed a device capable of translating Viridian data into formats humans could understand. The device contained everything: invasion plans, fleet positions, Viridian technological vulnerabilities, and most importantly, a warning. Finding the right human to receive this information proved challenging. It needed to be someone with access to power structures, but independent enough to act on unconventional information. After careful observation, Zrel identified Dr. Kira Chen, a physicist working on advanced defense systems with connections to multiple governments. Approaching her apartment at night, Zrel deliberately deactivated their camouflage. The encounter would be shocking, unavoidably so, but necessary. Dr. Chen's reaction to finding an alien in her living room was surprisingly measured. After the initial shock, she listened as Zrel explained the situation. The translation device converted Viridian language to human speech, allowing for direct communication. "Why are you betraying your people?" she asked, after Zrel had explained everything. The question struck at the core of Zrel's internal conflict. "The collective is making a mistake based on incomplete understanding," they explained. "They see your technology, not your potential. They measure your military hardware, not your adaptive capacity. They count your weapons, not your will. And you're different. You see something they don't." Zrel's scales shifted to a deep blue, a color of certainty among Viridians. "I have observed how humans respond to crisis. You become stronger, not weaker. You unify rather than fragment. You innovate when pressed. These qualities make you unique among species we have encountered." Dr. Chen studied the alien carefully. "If what you're saying is true, we don't have much time." 17 of your days before the invasion begins," Zrel confirmed. "This device contains everything you need. Fleet positions, technological specifications, strategic plans. Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Zrel replied. "Verify everything. But act quickly." As dawn approached, Zrel prepared to leave. The extraction team would arrive soon, expecting to find a loyal scout ready to report on an easily conquered world. Instead, they would find an empty pod and a warning beacon programmed to activate after Zrel was safely away. The message to the collective was simple. Humans are not what they appear. Underestimating them will be our downfall. Dr. Chen watched as the alien prepared to depart. "What will happen to you?" she asked. "I will be declared contaminated, probably terminated," Zrel answered matter-of-factly. "Then why do this?" Zrel paused, searching for words to explain a concept that had no direct equivalent in Viridian culture. "Because it is right. Another thing I've learned from humans. Sometimes the individual must stand against the collective when the collective is wrong." As Zrel activated their emergency transport unit, a one-way trip to an uninhabited moon, where they might survive undetected, they experienced something new. Uncertainty about the future, yet certainty about their choice. In the days that followed, humanity did exactly what Zrel had predicted. The warning spread quickly through global defense networks. Initial skepticism gave way to action as the evidence was verified. Ancient enemies shared information and resources. Scientific teams worked around the clock to develop countermeasures based on the Viridian specifications. When the Viridian fleet arrived, they expected to find a fragmented, unprepared world ripe for conquest. Instead, they encountered a unified planet with weapons specifically designed to target Viridian vulnerabilities. The invasion that was supposed to last days stretched into weeks, then months, as humans adapted to each Viridian tactic, learning and evolving their responses in real time. From their Limmer hiding place, Zrel watched as the collective was forced into a humiliating retreat, their first defeat in 1,000 years. The Viridian commanders never understood what had happened. They blamed faulty intelligence, equipment malfunctions, even cosmic anomalies. They never grasped the fundamental truth that Zrel had discovered. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were what happened when evolution rewarded adaptation above all else. They were what emerged when a species had to overcome their own nature to survive. They were, perhaps, the most dangerous and remarkable beings in the galaxy, not for what they were now, but for what they could become. As Zrel recorded their final log entry, they coined a phrase that would eventually become standard protocol throughout the galactic community. When assessing civilization potential, remember Earth. Never underestimate humans.